have a good, as you can see, it's I mean, I want to just acknowledge everybody for bringing everybody into this discussion, because it's an incredible diverse group. And I think we can have a really good conversation and led by Pete and Daniel. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Pete and Daniel and to lead the discussion and bring up if you want us to bring up the presentation. And when we're starting with questions, we're not that big of a group, so if you have questions, you can just shout out. If you want, you can put it in the question mark that you have a question, kind of raising up your hand too. That would work too. But feel free to get engaged and share your thoughts and ideas as topic comes up, because that's the purpose of the call.
Great. This is Pete Moore. I know several of you on the phone on the call here. Good to see you. I've been an investment banker in what we've coined the Halo sector, health, active, lifestyle, outdoors. I Googled the word wellness a couple of years ago. It was a guy at the Mayo Clinic back in the 1920s who was trying to come up with the opposite of illness. So if you're not sick, you're just okay. Didn't seem very aspirational for us or for probably everyone on this call here as trying to do great things. So we're trying to create the Halo effect. We've got a Halo Talks, which is a podcast. Carrie's been on it. Several others. We do a couple a week. We got something called Halo Academy. So we're actually doing like 5 business school type classes. And my day job used to be putting growth equity deals together. Now I've turned officially into what I've coined an entrepreneurial therapist. People calling me up and asking how to deal with their landlords, how to deal with their banks, how to deal with prepaid memberships. So I feel like I'm at the epicenter of opportunity and liability and stress and greatness at the same time. So hopefully I can give you a good perspective on the psyche of where things are today. Dan and I have known each other. So we just put together a brief set of slides, not to be academic, but just to tell you everything that we know right now and just to spawn some conversation. So Dan, you want to give a little background and kick it off?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Daniel Tia. I'm a managing director at CohnReznick. I work in their transaction advisory team. So essentially I work with private equity and other buyers or sellers of businesses, helping them understand the financials of a business. I have 25 years experience, so I have, including restructuring, so not just transactions experience, but restructuring as well. So I've worked on hundreds of clients in my career. I was previously the VP of Finance at New York Pilates, which I think some of you would know the name. It's a 5-studio Pilates chain. It was 4 when I started. We added 1, and there was another one in the works, which obviously the construction was slowed down due to the pandemic. I'm proud to say I've actually been a customer for all the fitness studios that are represented here. Obviously, Joe, you're not up and running yet, but I've certainly worked at a Mile High, at Fhitting Room, and at Physique 57. So I'm really, I love the brand, so I'm really excited to be part of this discussion. As Marianne and Pete said, this is meant to be interactive, so really just jump in with anecdotes, your concerns as we go through. And you, Juan, can you have you got the presentation to share? All right, we probably could skip to slide 3. Pete has a lot of experience in the deals, and on slide 2 you'll see there's a sample of the deals that he's been involved in, some of which CohnReznick has also been involved in. But Johan, can we go to slide 3? All right, Pete, we might just start talking while we're waiting.
Yeah, or if somebody wants to just hand me off the screen share.
That's fine. I've got a printout of the page, the page 3 in front of me, so maybe I'll just start.
Yeah, far away.
Yeah, so the first thing we have on the slide is really about landlord discussions and real estate outlook. And when last night I actually reached out to our real estate specialist, and he was able to give me some really interesting things that he's seeing at the moment in the market. With all these second wave of sort of rollbacks of the opening up of the various states, landlords are starting to now see a bit of the light as to what might happen long term. On the slide, you'll see in the point two, the outlook, the long term outlook is less than optimal, but we're not necessarily seeing the landlords coming to the party at the moment. But just of late, our real estate specialist has said, yep, that they're starting to come to the party. And so he gave me some really interesting examples of what we're seeing in terms of real estate negotiations. His best deal is crazy in my opinion, but he had someone that was able to get a 50% reduction in base rent for the entire term of the remaining lease, which was 10 years. So very special situation, I understand. I've reached out to him to find out what city it's in, because I think everyone would be interested to see exactly what the circumstances of that are. But he also said that he was able to get a buyout of a 6 month, for 6 months of rent for a lease that was had 6 years remaining. But something more in the middle, something more maybe midline of where you might be able to expect some negotiations is, he said for 18 months he's seen a deal where there was the rent went to 15% of rent plus percentage rent and taxes. So this is more of a hybrid, which gives something both to the landlord and to the tenant. These are not fitness deals, I would say. We do a lot of work in the hospitality industry. These are definitely retail deals, but they're not necessarily fitness space deals. But Pete, do you want to have?
I'll chime in here.
Yeah.
I just for people that don't know me, I just give it to you straight, and it might be a little bit piercing, but right now the landlords in New York City are trying to toe the line and use kind of bully tactics to get people to use their PPP money to pay them the rent, putting people into default, threatening to kick them out when they have the opportunity to kick them out. We've got a couple of seed investments that we've made. Carrie knows what we're invested in. We're trying to get out of a couple leases because we think even in the new normal, the leases that we've already signed are actually going to be anywhere between 25 to maybe even 40% over what the new normal market is. That's going to be a trade-off between losing the security deposit. But if you have a fitness studio, if you have a client that has a fitness studio that has very little build out, that's required, I think that there's going to be a glut of really interesting opportunities to move into, whether it's second floor space, whether it's studios that go out of business and basically the landlord is stuck with a fully built out location. So, as emotionally wed as entrepreneurs are to their current location, I think you really have to view it as a trade-off between the current asset that you have and what you're paying for. And that actually could potentially be a liability if you stay in it. When we work on studio deals, we work on health club deals, we always first focus on the leases. And those leases are typically at a great market lease and a long-term deal, and that's an asset, or the rents are too high, the step-ups are too high, the CAM's too high, and it's a liability. So in this opportunity here, even if you've got a great location and you're making $500,000 in cash flow coming at that location, you might be able to make $1 million and actually, have to go with an 18-wheeler, pick up all your stuff, maybe go virtual for a period of time, and resurface. So I feel like there's an opportunity right now for the boutique industry to effectively hibernate, it was mentioned here on Physique 57, the digital is really an opportunity where I think it's kind of been a wake-up call for pretty much every boutique operator that's in business right now. I think we were so busy doing well and filling up our studios, and and the entrepreneurs I've spoke to here, it's like, yeah, I'm at 80% capacity or I'm on a wait list, and that was awesome. But now we've actually decided, hey, look, this digital isn't as difficult to pull off, even if it's a little clunky right now with Zoom. That is really the wake-up call that I think our industry needed. So I think we did a case on Peloton the other day. The pandemic for them is a blessing, but it actually could be a curse, because I think it woke up all the sleepy giants that are on this call right now to say, hey, look, I can actually do that and actually have a physical face-to-face relationship with my members that you will never have. And I think as people get more and more uncomfortable sheltering in place, I've been doing my home workouts, but I'm ready to go back into the gym. I'm ready to go back into a boutique. If I have to wear a face shield, or if I have to, put a mask on, like, so be it. I'm not replacing my boutique studio experience because I have a home bike and I got an iPad. So I think everyone here should have some level of bravado, if you will, that your digital is going to continue to be a big part of what you do. And, your leases, if they're too high right now and you used to stress about it before COVID, like, I would take a very radical approach. And if you can get out, because there's going to be other space available. On segment 3 here on our page, we're talking about, I don't know if there's anyone here or some of the investors, maybe, actually, if you could stay on page 3 for a minute. We can go back. Basically, the HVLP, which is the high volume, low price. This is the Planet Fitness. This is Edge Fitness, EOS, Vasa, Fitness Connection. All these companies that have relied on all this high volume, they're concerned about that the volume is not going to be there. So all these studies that come out that say, hey, 88% or 100, 90% of the people are on the traffic flow into these HVLP locations, it's not true. It's about 60% right now. And a number of these HVLP concepts are going to try and, I think, raise their price because they got to cover the cleaning, and they can't rely on the volume because they actually can't handle the volume if they want to actually continue with the restrictions that are going to be in place. On number 5 here, I'll just tick through this list and then we can go through any questions. But, Gold's Gym filed for bankruptcy, technically to get out of 35 bad leases. That was the issue with that company. And that got bought in an auction by a German company, which is interesting, for $100 million. That private equity group the owner, family office, turned down a $210 million deal about 18 months ago. So in a lot of instances, when it comes to mergers and acquisitions, timing is more and more, essential to getting the returns. We were on last night with a Planet Fitness owner, private equity group named Clearlight, and they sold for 11 times EBITDA back in about 9 months ago. That number might not ever exist again in the health club industry. And then you got Gold's Gym, you've got 24-hour fitness filed for bankruptcy, you've got TSI, New York Sports Clubs. So there's going to kind of be a little bit of a black eye on the industry. Back in the day, if anyone remembers the Bally Fitness, we used to have to go as a banker and convince somebody on how you were different from Bally, because Bally was always in the press and it was always negative press. So now you're going to have to go up against, when we've had the wind at our sails of this industry and all these great things happening, we haven't had any real black eyes on the industry. So, you're going to have to say, now, if you're a health club operator, hey, here's how I'm different than 24-hour. Here's how I'm different than New York Sports Clubs. Here's how I'm different than Gold's Gym, because investors are going to think in their back of their mind, like they did 20 years ago. Somebody once said to me, they were in an investment committee, and someone said, investing in health clubs, isn't that where private equity goes to lose all their money? So you're going to start to like hear some of that sentiment, and it's going to be something that you haven't had to address in a long time. And then if you're on the boutique studio side, you know, the strong will survive. I don't know if it was published yet, but Barry's Boot Camp took in a capital infusion from a group called White Bay Capital. Equinox just took in, right before COVID, $400 million from Silver Lake to do their digital. But you're going to see a lot of boutique studio operators that, quite frankly, with all of us on the phone here, you know, probably should have never existed, because they should have stayed as the lead instructor of whoever they were working for, and didn't realize what it takes to actually run a business and run QuickBooks and run SEO and do your website and do your HR and, you know, manage a business versus just managing a class. So you're going to see a lot of fallout, and I think you're going to have a lot of instructors coming back to you that actually want to work for you because they don't want to run their own business anymore. And I think also you're going to see a lot of locations closing, which from an investor standpoint is going to be tainted with a brush across the industry. But I think this is a very Darwinian time. And if you do have the capital and you're able to hibernate and keep your PPP, invest in your digital, basically take all of your A employees and keep your A employees as part of the team. But you know, you can't be emotional about keeping employees that are not part of your nuclear team right now. And as much as you know, I want to make sure everybody survives and has a job and is able to pay for things that they need to pay for, you know, you gotta differentiate between, you know, what's personal and what's business. And sometimes in these hard times, you got to make really tough decisions. So kind of finish it up here on this page, you're gonna see the HVLPs probably take over more locations, but I think the price, the race to the bottom of price is over as far as I'm concerned. You know, Dan, do you want to pause there? You want to add anything to that?
I think it's a good spot just to see what opinions people have, whether they've got any thoughts that they would like to share with the team, with the group.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Pete. This is Rob. Maybe one or two quick thoughts. I think on points 1 and 2 from that prior page, I think your comments were more New York City centric. I was curious if there were any differing views or observations from other urban areas or from suburban type of areas nationally. I know, Daniel, you mentioned you guys TriNet's national in coverage. So that was one immediate question I wanted to put out there.
Yeah, so just one, a couple of anecdotes. So a lot of the commercial real estate that has fitness boutiques and health clubs as tenants have traded hands to the point where most of these buildings are now owned by real estate investment trusts. And those real estate investment trusts, which are, you know, basically aggregates of funds, you know, are, if they have leverage with you as a tenant, they are going to continue to try and press you as hard as possible to make those payments. And if you don't have a large portfolio of leases with them, you know, you're probably going to feel the wrath of what they're presenting to you, because they have put a significant amount of debt on their own businesses. So they'll buy these buildings and then they'll buy them for a 6 cap or a 7 cap rate, and then they'll layer 50% debt on from a pension fund or insurance company like Aon maybe. And they need to make those payments. So it's kind of a cascading effect of, if the real estate investment group, which is trying to salvage their returns and might be a publicly traded company, has money from a pension fund or an insurance company or endowment fund or CalPERS, and they're getting pressure, you know, that's all kind of pushed down now to the tenant, because once you make that monthly payment, it's going back to this real estate investment trust. It's getting spliced up. as a dividend or as an interest payment. So around the country, we're seeing in the big urban areas, if the REITs think that they can find an alternative user and they think your rents are too low, they're sending in default notices and being very aggressive. LA Fitness is an anecdotal note here. What they did was they actually have a lot of leases with the same real estate investment trust. So they actually, Realty Income as an example, owns 45 LA Fitness leases. So LA Fitness there now knows that they have leverage, that if I'm not paying for 45 leases, that's like a serious dent in my real estate investment trust. So what LA did, which was unbelievable, is they sent out a letter to all their landlords on April 1st, and they said, hey, I'm not asking you for a rent abatement. I'm actually putting you in breach because I can't access my facility, and you've busted my quiet enjoyment clause, and you owe me two weeks of rent in March. So, if you're an 800-pound gorilla, you can take that kind of approach. If you're a single operator and you're dealing with a REIT, or you're dealing with something that's in a mortgage-backed security, they might not have the flexibility to even show any empathy. So I'd say it's across the board, but on average, we're seeing people getting rent abatements and some percentage of rent deals. But, I think the gloves are off now. People are not as empathetic as they were before because they've got other people breathing down their necks.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Peter. That's exactly right. It's in the big cities that you have the sort of the big companies that are really setting the tone. But some other just comments, Rob. One is that I just got an email back that 50% reduction in base rent was in Pennsylvania, so suburban Pennsylvania. So that gives you a bit of a view. I'm also a member of a small sort of fitness networking group, which is nationwide. And what you find as you move into the more suburban areas, it's more mixed. You don't have as many of the big players necessarily. So it really depends on the landlord's individual circumstances and what's happening in that region. And so you run the gamut of people saying our landlord is just not budging an inch, and then to people who are getting good deals like the one that I just mentioned. So there's definitely a gap there.
Yeah, we can push through this slide, but I think everyone now who's probably on the phone is still kind of in some level of negotiations with their landlord, and I'm not sure how quickly those are going to get resolved. But these landlords need a dose of reality, so I would not assume that you should just acquiesce and allow a landlord to potentially take advantage of a situation, because there's nobody coming behind you to take over your studio. And if they say that there is, they're bluffing. If you want to, good.
Yeah, I was just going to say, anyone else with any questions or comments or even questions? We covered a few different things there. So
yeah, this is Marianne, and this could be a good sort of topic, because Pete, you had mentioned yesterday, talked about relatable to insurance as business interruption, and maybe Jill can shed some light as it relates to where that you can obtain or look for or ask for as it relates to your current insurance program.
Sure. So this, you want me to talk, Marianne?
Yeah.
Please.
Can shed some lights to what are we seeing and related to business interruption? What are the insurance companies doing? How are they supporting the lockdown? Related to the problem? Yeah.
So in general, the insurance companies are either declining the business interruption claims, or they are sending questionnaires and asking clients to to document their loss. In general, the consensus is that the insurers will say that the presence of a virus or the loss of use of your facility because of the pandemic does not meet a physical damage trigger that is typical under property insurance. So property insurance usually requires a trigger of physical damage, hurricane, earthquake, fire, water damage, where the property is physically damaged. And they're going to say that the presence of a virus does not constitute physical damage. Many policies actually have exclusions about virus. They have exclusions about loss of use. They have exclusions about loss of market. But there's a lot of noise, right? So there are a lot of trial attorneys who are approaching, and many of you may have already been approached by some attorneys to say, oh, we'll get past that. We'll get the courts to say that this will be covered. So, you should file a claim, and, we'll sue the insurance companies for your business interruption. And we don't know how that's going to play out. There have been two decisions already in the U.S. that support the insurance companies. There are hundreds of lawsuits that have been filed, many by restaurants. And one thing that's interesting, that when Peter was talking about the landlords, we've seen some retail clients who have looked for rent abatement from their landlords, and the landlords have replied, well, show me a declination letter from your insurance company to prove that you are not getting coverage for this from your insurance company. So that was a development that surprised me. So in those cases, maybe the client wasn't sure should they file a claim, and then this landlord is putting on this requirement, and that can be really challenging to prove if you've got multiple facilities in multiple states, but a few retailers, it's not widespread. A few retailers have mentioned that, so they filed claims, and then when they, if and when they get a declination, they're using that, but that's taking a lot of time. So that's not providing an immediate, something that, and I don't even know what the landlords are doing with that. Are they, saying, okay, you're not insured, so yeah, here's your rent abatement? I doubt that that's really happening. I think it's just another delay tactic, I think. So that's what we're seeing. We expect, there are some businesses, some of our large hospitality clients that have some actual coverage in their policies. It's called communicable disease coverage. And it's low limit, aggregate limit, and they have to prove that there was the actual presence of the disease at the site, which is harder than you'd think. So the insurers are demanding, records of the employee maybe being there, or a customer being there, in a casino, records of the person that was in the casino, and then, a document from their positive COVID-19 test. So that's not easy to do. Sometimes testing, remember way back when, testing wasn't available. So you couldn't even get a test, at least in New York, for, the month of March, April, May. So that's very difficult to prove. So the insurance companies, they will fight to the death, literally, about these claims. They do not have there's not enough money in the policyholder surplus of all the insurers we do business with to pay these claims. So they really will fight to the death on this. There has been some proposals in different states and even in Washington to retroactively require the insurance companies to pay these claims. That has not gained traction either in Washington or in the different states, and I don't expect that it will. But it could, anything could happen. This is like, COVID-19 is like we're all experiencing. This is an intellectual challenge beyond anything we've ever experienced. I thought I've seen it all, 35 years doing this. But no, not seen it all. Welcome to COVID-19 BI claims. So that's the general thing we're seeing. You may see a lot of press, maybe your general counsel or other people are encouraging you to file claims because the attorneys are saying they'll get this covered. If you want to go that route, certainly try it. There'll be a lot of legal expenses though involved, and it'll take a long, long time. So, but like I said, we don't know what the judges are going to say. There's a test case going on in England with those insurance companies. So there's a lot to follow here.
Would you say that, would you say that you could hire someone for like 10 minutes that has COVID to walk in and out of your studio so you can affect that claim? Would that be like a moral hazard?
You know, I'm
I can't believe that's a requirement.
That's if you have the coverage. There's not that many clients that actually have that coverage actually. So it's pretty limited to some of the, very largest hospitality clients and one or two insurers that typically covered it. So, some of our, we deal with some of the largest organizations in the world. So those are the businesses that sometimes have that broad coverage. So, a typical standard insurance policy wording from ISO is not going to have that wording.
Got it.
So if I can jump in here, I had a question that I wanted to pose to our guests that represent the fitness studios. Jennifer, I know that you mentioned that, you've had a change in your business model where right now you've gone digital. Has anyone started new revenue streams and finding them successful? And are these things that you're going to continue to offer when the world goes back to normal?
I could speak to that from Fitting Room's perspective. So before we closed our studios, we had made the decision to take our studio experience and go virtual in the most literal way that we could. So we kept our class caps at 24 people, which is what we do in studio. We decided it had to be face-to-face, so we're using Zoom. Because for us, things like form correction, personal attention, like modifying exercises is all part of our brand promise. So we have seen really great success with that, and we have, made a commitment to keep what we call Fitting Room live permanently, which even our New York City-based clients who want to come back to the studio are still excited about because they think that they'll basically participate more frequently. So, I could do this a few days a week, still come to the studio once a week. So we're seeing a bump there, but we're also seeing a really significant number of people totally new to the brand, as well as lapsed users who had not been in the studio 30 days prior to closing. A really large, significant number have found their way back to the experience through that platform. So we're investing, in the platform itself, as well as in partnerships to support the growth of it, and really leveraging that. And then last summer, we actually had launched Fitting Room On Demand, which, is sort of exactly that. It's our on-demand product. I see that a little bit more as, it's a more price point accessible entry to the brand. Our live classes, we charge more, and it's more of our a la carte pricing, as well as, a good value-added service, and we're looking at how to bundle that with some of our other offerings, because it's really sort of an anytime, anywhere, but it's not like the 100% fitting room experience that you can deliver with two-way communication. So we do anticipate like a future state where we're looking at 50% of our revenues coming from digital and 50% from physical, either flagship locations or other experiences through partnerships. So.
I can speak for Mile High. I mean, we've had mixed success. I think that our Zoom classes have done okay. I think it's been a little bit more of a challenge for us where people were coming to us specifically for cardio and being on a treadmill. So it's harder to translate. We're now doing runners' strength classes, but that wasn't wasn't our core competency. We just launched on demand. We're doing on-demand audio guided runs, and that's gaining pretty good traction. So that's our existing coaches doing exactly what we did on the treadmill, but you can either do it outside or we have some that are treadmill specific as well. We'll be rolling out some sort of complementary video on demand in the coming months as well. But I think like Carrie will probably have a hybrid where when we reopen the studios, I see us continuing to do the Zoom classes as well for quite some time. I don't know if it'll be indefinite.
With all these virtual classes, certainly during the pandemic, the what I'll call the talent, the instructors. Obviously, I've seen a lot of instructors doing their own private classes. Does anyone see any, I guess, cannibalization or conflict there with their current talent or their previous instructors? And are you expecting them to come back and work with your brands, or do you think some of them might even try and set out on their own? I'd be interested to see. In the Pilates space, it's much more talent-centric, perhaps, than some of your modalities. But interested if anyone's got any views on that.
I'll talk about it. I think for a lot of studios, a lot of studios were slow to react as a studio, so a lot of their talent went very quickly to like free workouts on Instagram. We rolled out to our team our plans before we closed, and we went 3 days without having classes either in studio or on virtual. So we, since we were paying the team for 2 weeks, regardless of what happened when we first closed, everybody was locked in, and then we were up and running. And so we've always maintained our full-time trainers, which is about half of them, and have been pretty transparent throughout about sort of like short-term versus long-term. And if everybody chips away like little by little at sort of the customer base and everybody takes their loyals off the platform, then when the world returns to normal and other places open and it's a lot harder for them to sort of maintain their own full schedules, there's going to be nothing to return to. So for us specifically, we've been able to really keep our core, strong, engaged, working, and sort of focused on the long term. But we've also been able to replace enough revenue to keep enough people sort of, engaged and focused on the long game. I think it's a real, I do think it's a real challenge, but I also think a lot of those individuals who went off in general the industry are finding it really hard to do all of the infrastructure. It's hard to strike up marketing partnerships on your own, and there's a lot of infrastructure and support that comes with a team and a brand.
Yeah,
I would say
to Pete's comment. Sorry, Jennifer, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we don't have that many teachers on staff. Because we had the video on demand platform, we've been able to move a lot of people to that platform. But for instructors, it has been tough. I think to Carrie's point, they did try to do their own thing, and it is so hard. It is very, very hard. We probably have one advantage in that our instructors are mostly dancers. So it's different from other disciplines where if they're not teaching bar, they're probably dancing. So we didn't have a lot of people try to become like the next fitness phenomenon. But what we're seeing, which is really, and I don't know if other people have seen this, and Carrie and I are on another call together once in a while, and a lot of my teachers are not coming back to New York and they're leaving the fitness industry. So it's actually, it's the exact opposite of what you're saying, or they're not so much competing. I just got an email from a teacher, and she's like 32 and so talented and wonderful, and she's living at home up in Rochester with her parents with no plans to come back. And it's like, we get a lot of stories like that. So my concern, and we're in New York City, and my concern is that there's not much of a reason for a high potential 30-something or 20-something aspiring fitness instructor or aspiring dancer or Broadway star to live in New York. So that might be our biggest problem if we, I like that hibernation comment that was made earlier, but when we come back, I don't know how many teachers are in New York. And I don't know if that's specific to just Physique, but that's my bigger concern these days.
I think that's probably going to be the same with Pilates. A very similar source of talent. A lot of them are dancers, but I mean, it was hard before the pandemic to get good qualified teachers. So I think it's going to be pretty similar.
Just one other comment, just maybe to spawn some conversation, but in a couple of the fitness studios that we work with or that we're invested in, the instructor pay kind of somewhat got a little bit out of control. And some of the instructors that were teaching classes were starting to make more money than they should. And we're talking internally with a couple of groups to say, hey, we want to bring back our top 5, but we actually want to bring them back at like, $75 a class and not, $120 a class. So I just wonder, how people are thinking about resetting not only the rents, but maybe resetting some of the labor rates and maybe, sharing some of the digital revenue or, giving people more classes and trying to keep your core. But some of the payrolls not only got out of control from a dollar revenue per hour, but also just the amount of people that you had on your bench. Some people were running like the equivalent of like a college football team where they got like 85, trainers suited up that are doing like 3 or 4 classes a week. I'm like, well, just find like your top 10 and like give them a full-time job. So I just wonder how people are thinking about.
So, I mean, we've always kind of been more, I think, in line with what you're saying, Pete. We often would hear the offers that were coming at our trainers for some fairly insane and non-sustainable rates. But, I think we found like a pretty good sweet spot where people feel like really fairly compensated, but not over the top. And we gave them, what we did was we would give really nice blocks of classes to trainers. So like you said, less trainers, more full-time. You come in, you're going to get 4 classes, 3 classes, 5 classes potentially in one block of time. So it's well worth it. And you're not, our trainers are all personal trainers by, background and education. So if you're traveling around the city to do like, a bunch of private clients, you can't make as much money, even if you're getting more per hour than if you have a block of 5 classes. And so that was sort of how we found a good spot. We also, I think for better or worse, when things were in their, for their normal state of affairs pre-COVID, because we were always like that sweet spot between personal training and group fitness, we had relatively small classes, 24 people with 2 trainers. And so long as we are at, suboptimal capacities in our studios, we also have the ability to go to 1 trainer. So like on our digital platform, it's 1 trainer for 24 people. We're doing outdoor classes with 1 trainer. And so we sort of had an easy way to, sort of manage our instructor costs without cutting the individual themselves rate. But that was sort of unique, I think, to our business model as well.
Pete, sort of related to that, and maybe Lionel can chime in. This is Rob. I was on something a couple weeks ago with your colleague Lance Armstrong, but because pro sports are sort of in suspense and still figuring out their plan based on state rules, etc., it would seem that celebrities are going to be more engaged and looking for other areas of either income involvement or community involvement. But Lionel, you guys have an interesting proposition, what you guys are doing there at Next. Do you agree, or am I in left field on that?
No, I think that's right. I think, I would say in terms of our portfolio companies right now, the one that is leading the charge, or 2, I guess the 2 that are leading the charge on that would be Aura, and which is the sleep sensor ring that the NBA just adapted for their opening, and all the players and staff in the Disney bubble are going to be wearing the ring. And then spinning out of that, I think what we're going to see is a lot of the individual athletes trying to decide whether they're going to share their sleep data and figure out a way to try and monetize that in some form or another. And then the other company that we've got in our portfolio is a company called Powerdot, which is a mobile e-stim unit. And that's the one I would say that where we've seen individual athletes coming to us asking, and in particular in the kind of what I'll call crossover sports. So a lot of the high profile fitness trainers with large Instagram followings are coming to Powerdot and asking to try and activate their customer base with Powerdot and getting paid for that. So those would be the 2 that we've seen it happen most aggressively. We aren't invested in any fitness studio or fitness/coaching apps yet. We've looked at literally probably 100 of each, and are trying to navigate and figure out the next best play on it. And I agree with the comments at the top of the hour, where Peloton has a huge head start, but they better be looking over their shoulder. I think we're seeing a massive shift in just how people think about fitness and I'm going to use the term wellness because I think it's particularly appropriate for millennials and younger. It's really all they care about.
Yeah, I'm actually working on a transaction for a Peloton competitor, but they also do some other connected products. And the demand, the interest in it has been crazy. So I think, the Pelotons of the world, they do have competition from other providers, but I think Pete's right. It's really a wake-up call to all the studios. And what I see is just brand. It becomes so much more important in the virtual world. And if you've got a good brand, then you're more likely to be successful. There's a lot of players out there, but there's a lot of small ones. And in the end, how do you get noticed in the virtual world? It's really about having that really strong brand. So the fundamentals that all the operators have been working on are still the same. It's really pushing that image, pushing that brand, because that's what's going to get you traction, whether it's physical or virtual.
So we're coming up to an end, and I want to say thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Pete, and thank you everybody for participating. This was extremely valuable. We're looking at ways where we can support your industry and the fitness industry. As we're also going virtually, we've been doing these every morning, every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. on this topic. This was focused specifically to the fitness industry. We are also starting to go on and be more in person. So if you guys have ideas and thoughts on how we can support this industry and yourself, please feel free to reach out. This evening, we have our first, going back to not normal, but it'll be even more curated, but we have about 5 investors and investment banks kind of meet up that have been previously on these calls. So we, for the first time, are meeting in person. I have a big rooftop up here that we get together, so it's pretty safe. So if you're interested in talking to us about how more we can support you guys, please feel reach out. And with that, have a wonderful night, everybody, or day. Nice.
Thank you.
We're not in Australia.
Nice to meet everyone. Thank you for your
Daniel
time.
and Tristan. Enjoy your day.
Thank you all.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
Good seeing everyone.